All right. So today's topic is again a serious one. It's an unfortunate one that in our fallen world, so to speak, we deal with issues that are not pleasant. We deal with issues that um, are not the ideal, especially with those that are most vulnerable. And in our practice, we take this very seriously. Our branding, our image is to honor and to protect. And the idea of elder abuse is one that we don't want to see, we don't want to encounter, and when we do all that we can to stop it, to prevent it, to fix it. So what we'll talk about today is recognizing it, preventing it, responding to it. If you have questions, please save them to the end. I'll be happy to answer them. We have had experiences in my 27 years of practice where families have typically been financially, or individuals have been financially abused, and we'll talk about that today. But unfortunately, I'm sure there's been other situations and cases that we were not made aware of. So we'll get into it today. We're going to start off with, of course, just a definition. What are we actually talking about, and what is elder abuse? So first and foremost, elder abuse is the mistreatment or causing of harm or loss to an older person. Mistreatment is the operative word there. Now, it can occur in the community, in people's homes. It can occur within families. It can occur within hospitals, within nursing homes, and as well as assisted living facilities, of course. Elder abuse, all 50 states have laws and reporting systems. There are mandated reporters. We've heard of that from teachers and nurses and social workers, like we have on staff here. So there are different categories of elder abuse, and unfortunately, it's a very wide net. So there is a domestic type of elder abuse, which is often undertaken by relatives and caregivers. There is an institutional elder abuse, which occurs within institutions such as nursing or assisted living facilities. And there is also the idea of self-neglect. It's abuse, just not done by somebody else, not done by a third party. And it's when somebody fails to care for themselves. So with that structure of domestic, institutional, and self-neglect, let's talk about the different types of elder abuse that we've encountered, and that these laws and programs nationwide and globally are trying to prevent. So there is a physical elder abuse, which we'll talk about, and we'll get into each of these. There is a sexual elder abuse. Psychological or emotional elder abuse is a real thing as well. As I mentioned in the beginning, financial abuse also occurs, and then neglect and self-neglect. So let's define each of these so we can have a better understanding of what, and again, this idea of psychological or emotional may be a new concept to some of you, but let's get into it a little bit. When we talk about physical abuse, that's going to be an obvious one for most people. It's the use of force, causing pain or injury. Again, different stories we've heard and seen and experienced. It could be hitting, it could be pinching, it could be shaking, it could be burning. Abuse is abuse, and when this is happening, even if it's just once, it's abusive. It also includes the use of restraints. Physical abuse can also be forced feeding. It could be domestic abuse within a family, a spouse or a child. It also includes the inappropriate use of medications to sedate, for example, if it's only supposed to be used at certain times of the day or the evening, and yet it's being used consistently throughout the day. That's abuse. And you need to be aware of these types of scenarios. When we talk about sexual abuse, again, something that does sound like it is defined, but it's non-consensual sexual contact. It does include assault. It includes photography, includes nudity, it includes, of course, physical rape and the like, unfortunately. So this is, again, photography, and there's stories out there, there's news clippings out there on things that are unfortunate, and this can happen in facilities as well as within homes. And we have had the unfortunate occasion of dealing with this once or twice. The psychological abuse, which can be the emotional component, that's going to be emotional pain via threats. And we've had clients, estate planning clients, where we have abusive children, and then or beneficiaries that are threatening to do something or not do something unless they're left certain assets or unless they're given certain money during their lifetime. It could be humiliation. It could be intimidation. Um, it- treating an elder or a parent or a person you're caring for like a baby. So it's the insults, it's the humiliation that's associated with that. Psychological abuse can also be isolation, not allowing visitors. It could be the silent treatment. It can be insults. It can be name calling. And again, when we're talking about vulnerable people, right, what do we think of? We think of children, we think of the elderly. And these are folks that are perhaps no longer able to protect themselves and defend themselves as they once were. So there are people out there that take advantage of that. And again, we see these scenarios. And the purpose of today's presentation is to share and remind people and call attention to the fact that this is occurring and it needs to stop. All right. Financial abuse, as I said in the beginning, that's what we do see the most common, of course, in our estate planning and in our elder law practice. The reality is it happens a lot. And we've had cases and clients, I could think of a half dozen right off the top of my head, where family or caregivers, different relationships, are taking advantage of the financial situation, which we'll be talking about. The unfortunate reality is that the law enforcement, it's very difficult for the district attorney's office to prosecute cases like this. And last year we had Shannon Miller as a guest on one of our prior webinars. Shannon is a leading certified elder law attorney down in Florida, and they've been able to get on the books certain anti-exploitation laws and rules in the state of Florida. So if you go through our website, tullylawgroup.com, or go to our YouTube page, Tully Law Group, you'll be able to find that webinar from last year. I believe it was in 2024. And she shares how Florida has stepped up in a good way to fight this, combat this, so that there are faster court mechanisms and law enforcement mechanisms to stop the perpetrator and to penalize them. And unfortunately, and that was the conclusion of our webinar with Shannon last year, New York doesn't have that. And then that's certainly something that needs to change within the state. So the definition, when we talk about financial abuse, we're referring to the misuse of funds and assets. Again, when we look at children, we look at caregivers, if they have access, there could be an entitlement. I'm caring for mom for 10 years. I lost my job. I gave up a promotion. I'm going to have mom pay for my car, and mom doesn't know. Mom hasn't consented. That is misuse of the funds. And those things do happen, so be mindful of it. It could be forgery, coercion, outright theft, exploitation, and trickery. We had a client here where unfortunate situation, and it's very rare, but it does happen, at least within our world and our clients. An older client was writing checks and then giving them to the caregiver to pay the bills, or just signing the checks and giving them to the caregiver to pay the bills on behalf of the senior. And the senior would fill in the dollar figure, but leave room for in the box where you write the number, for example, 500, he would leave room there, and the aide would just write a 1 before the 500, so it would become 1,500, and she'd make the check payable to herself. This had happened for some time before that we were notified of it. So there is, again, rather sophisticated or simple ways in which abuse and theft and misuse of funds can happen. All right. We've seen this on occasion. We've seen it be attempted. We've had the opportunity to stop it, where the client might call, but yet there's a decline in capacity and there's a frailty, and the person pushing this is trying to get themselves named as a beneficiary into the will or the trust, or even be named as a beneficiary on a financial account or an IRA or a life insurance policy. Now, if that were to occur, and this isn't necessarily the purpose of today's program, but there are um, certain aspects that we have to be on the lookout for as attorneys in representing our clients. We have to zealously represent and protect our clients. And when it comes time to execute certain legal documents, we have to be very careful and mindful of what's called undue influence. We have to be careful of duress, whereas there's perhaps threats at home or threats on the drive to the lawyer's office. You better sign this, you better change that. We need to be very aware of that and be able to perceive when it's happening, if it's ever happening. And those are certainly what are called objections, viable and valid objections to wills and trusts. Undue influence, duress, coercion, mistake, lack of capacity, and so forth. So there's a whole field, of course, and surrogates courts exist primarily to handle wills and estates, but there's a significant aspect of litigation because these things do incur. And when they do, they need to be fixed. Okay, moving on from financial abuse to neglect and again self-neglect. It's very important, and we do see actually the self-neglect. I won't say more commonly, but we do see it more. So what do we mean? Now, neglect is generally from a third party. It can be from a child, it could be from a paid caregiver. So it's the caregiver's failure to provide food, hydration, shelter, care, medications, clothing. It can include abandonment. It can include unsanitary living conditions, ignoring their legal duties, intentionally not paying bills. So there's a financial aspect to this as well. Just last week, we were there's a client situation that we're investigating with an unsafe living environment, and it's not a pleasing situation because there's a reason there's hoarding. There's a reason, and this gets into that emotional component. There's a reason that there's this is allowed to happen and to build up. And we could do all we can to recommend, whether it's therapy, treatments, having the place cleaned out, whether it's mold, mildew, rodents, etc. So there's aspects that we can encourage and we can push, and we have resources to help families, of course, overcome this as a part of our estate planning and our elder care work as well. Now, on the self-neglect side, that's the failure of a person to provide for one's own essential needs. The ones basically we just talked about: food, hydration, shelter, proper medical care, not going to the doctors, not going to the dentist, not refilling prescriptions, taking the wrong prescriptions, not changing clothing, not bathing, allowing toileting, plumbing issues, the gathering of dirty laundry, of adult diapers, etc. There's all of these concerns that occur. And if you're visiting your loved one and you start seeing these things, you might be starting to encounter the idea of self-neglect. And again, there are steps that can be taken apart from working with a firm like ours. On that note, I'll just take a brief moment to share the reality is lawyers are lawyers, and some lawyers are ill-equipped to handle these types of issues. We're not. The way we operate is we have a registered nurse on staff, we have a geriatric social worker on staff, as well as a case manager. And I've built this firm to be caring and supportive and to honor and to protect. So we will do all that we can to help and intervene and get resources in there. And again, resources are going to be the key because we've built a Rolodex, if you will, of referrals and qualified people that can help depending on the circumstances. All right. So again, this is a big one, and it's out there. So if you see it, start looking for some help. There are always risk factors. So abuse can, of course, just happen randomly, but there are certain things and scenarios and risk factors that can play a role. So for example, if there is a past domestic violence situation, it can be a child to parent, it could be spousal. That's certainly a potential risk factor for it to happen again. Caregiver issues, and I'll include in that stress. we've had the occasion, and in my practice, in my research, and working with families for so long, caregivers can start with the best of intentions. Caregivers can stop by in the morning and in the evening, and then next thing you know, we're a couple months down the road, they're stopping by at lunchtime. Then perhaps they're taking off more, they're missing vacations, they're missing promotions, their finances are in jeopardy, their health is in jeopardy. All of the stress that a caregiver goes through, it builds, just like it does in every other aspect of our lives. And when stress builds, from caregiving in particular, we can lash out, we can be resentful, we can be bitter, we can do things that we wouldn't normally have done if we've slept for the last week, right? So caregiver issues doesn't necessarily mean, as it says on the screen, that it's a mental illness or codependency issue. It could just be burnout and bad decision making, and your body not being as healthy as it can be mentally and emotionally and physically. And we've seen these things happen. So if you're a caregiver watching this, you got to start prioritizing your own self-care as well, not only for your loved one, but for yourself. I'll say here, we've seen caregiver issues of, again, mental illness, dependency, especially when a child is living there. And when there's no boundaries, that's where that entitlement to the access of the funds and so forth and the use of the money can happen more readily. So it's something certainly to be aware of. Another risk factor is when you have social isolation. Now that can be intentional, or it could just be a senior that refuses to, more of a recluse. But if you have a caregiver there, a child that lives there and isolates them, no longer to the doctors, no longer to the daycare center, no longer to visiting other family members or family members coming to the house, that can be in order to shelter and basically prevent others from noticing what they've been doing as far as abuse. So be mindful of that. There are, of course, warning signs to this. And I'll go through what we've come across and what we've been able to put together for you today. There are obvious warning signs, and there are less obvious warning signs. If you're able to visit and see bruises, burns, and fractures, and be mindful that as our parents and grandparents and neighbors and family and loved ones age, their skin can bruise more easily. And you've seen that perhaps after they come home from a doctor or a hospital visit, that it's black and blue. Doesn't necessarily mean abuse. It could just be the IV. It could have been, assisting them into the wheelchair properly. So don't jump to conclusions, but rather investigate and talk about it. Poor hygiene, bed sores, medical neglect. So if a person's living on their own, are they bathing? Are they changing? Are their undergarments? Are they making it to the bathroom on time? And these are conversations we have with our clients all the time when we're talking about what's called the activities of daily living. And bathing, toileting, dressing, all appropriate independent things we need to be able to do to remain independent. And if we're not handling those activities of daily living, then it can result in infection, which UTIs, huge significant factor that we encounter. It's not just a medical biological problem. It could also become a cognitive issue just due to what the infection can do to the body and to the brain. So medical neglect, is there a child or a caregiver in the home? Are they not bringing the senior to the doctor appointments or the dentist as they should be? Something to keep an eye out for. Has your loved one, your neighbor, for example, has there been a change in their mood or their alertness? Does it seem like they're not sleeping? Does it seem like the medications are making them drowsier than they were in the past? So things to be aware of. Continuing on with warning signs. Does the senior show fear of the caregiver? When they're in the room, are their eyes darting back and forth? Are they hushing the conversation? Are they being left alone and isolated? Again, warning signs. If you have access to the finances, have you seen a larger withdrawal than normal? Are you seeing repetitive smaller checks? All of these things happen. We had one child who was helping mom with her finances, and she lived out of state, and there had been some time where she wasn't helping, so mom was handling her own, and there was a systematic withdrawal of funds internationally, and it was occurring. She was the client was instituting these transactions to Canada on her own through Western Union. She thought she was doing the right thing. And when the daughter finally got involved, we had there was an accumulation of over 200, if not close to $300,000 that had been transferred internationally, that the local law enforcement was unable to help with. So keep an eye on the financial records and the accounts, the balances. Are there those unexplained withdrawals by others? And I'll give you another example when we talk about forged signatures. Another client that we had in Queens, a child finally got involved, right? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. We all know that saying. And the story I just told and the one I'm going to tell right now is children not being involved and the not being involved enough. The house was actually deeded over to a caregiver who was in from another country, which again most are, and thank God they're here to help. But there was a language barrier, there was other concerns, but yet the house was now in this lady's name. We went to the district attorney's office, couldn't prove that it was a forgery, couldn't prove that it was a theft. She said he signed it over, he didn't necessarily remember, and it went nowhere. The Queens district attorney was unable to help the family. So again, these things can happen. Another thing to be aware of is what we call new best friends, right? Is there somebody getting in close with your neighbor, with your aunt, with your loved one, and all of a sudden now they're spending all time with them, and now they want to start changing things, and oh, she needs a car. Let me give her the car. I don't use mine anymore. Oh, I paid the doctor bill or the dental bill. It was small. She's a friend. Don't worry about it. Be mindful of these things. That is how certain scammers work. Some signs that we see of neglect and emotional concerns. I want to share that next. If you're visiting with your loved one, or again, you're the person in the community, are they agitated? Are they paranoid? Are they rocking back and forth? Is there, again, something going on emotionally that can be a sign of something bigger that they're not sharing? Is the home environment, is it a poor living condition? Are they dehydrated? Are they malnourished? Look in the refrigerator if you have that ability. Look in the cabinets. Is there food? Is there fresh? Is there water glasses? Is there milk? Are there vitamins? Is the medications in a clean, organized fashion? All things to be aware of. Have there been reports of mistreatment? Okay, yeah, it could be the sky is falling, it could be a paranoia, but maybe it is really happening. All right. Now, what I want to share next is how to actually report it, where to report it if you do unfortunately see these signs. If it's an emergency, of course, 911. All right, that makes sense. The second bullet point I have there is APS. That stands for Adult Protective Services. Each county has its own APS office, but the number up there is for New York State. And of course, you could be connected to your borough or to your county, 1-844-697-3505 for New York State Adult Protective Services. New York City has its own 718 number, 557-1399. If it's a nursing home concern or assisted living concern, I have those numbers up there. For nursing homes, it's 1-888-201-4563. If it's an assisted living, if there's a concern about abuse within an assisted living, 1-866-893-6772. Of course, if you're in a nursing home, you're in assisted living, you can talk to the nurse, you could talk to supervisors. There is going to be what's called an ombudsman who can certainly accept your complaint and talk to the state as well. So, and that long-term care ombudsman, there should be flyers throughout the building with names and phone numbers for you to be able to reach out to them. Okay. And of course, and I'll talk about it briefly in a moment, if there's time and ability here, like the three scenarios I've mentioned, that's where loved ones and families have reached out to us, and we've been able to intervene and create trust structures and other power of attorney authority structures so that the assets there's a gatekeeper. Okay, so that's a real way to address this as well. Some final thoughts. Certainly be alert to personality and behavior changes. I've got kids in their 20s and I've got a soon to be teenager. And there's personality changes and behavior changes. We're aware of that as we watch children grow in age. So be mindful of that. Trust your instincts. All right, it's your gut. Follow your gut. Ask questions respectfully. Poke and prod and see what's going on. There's a website, NCEA. It stands for the National Center on Elder Abuse, and it could lead to some of those phone numbers I shared on the prior screen. And of course, with the internet that we have today, you can always research and find more information, or again, reach out to a firm such as ours that can focus on more than just the legal documents and the lawyer stuff, but also the care issues, the resources, and the referrals. Elder abuse does often happen in silence. If you see it, talk about it. All right. Again, 911. If there's a family member, if there's something you're seeing, talk to the police, talk to Adult Protective Services. Where we come in and what we've done with folks, as I've shared a moment ago, is there are trust structures, whether revocable or irrevocable trusts, as well as what we call durable modified powers of attorney that can be put into place to shelter the financial accounts, their financial resources, again, where we could have access or protected access. And that way we have a gatekeeper and somebody else who's not the abuser in charge of the finances and how that's going. All right. So I hope that this was helpful, kind of give you a little insight into the unfortunate world of elder abuse, the different types of abuse and how to spot it and what to do. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. If not, we're going to wrap up. And I look forward to you joining us in our July webinar. Again, tullylawgroup.com. There's a lot of information. We have our prior webinars up there. You can certainly go there and look at them. If you want to learn more about the irrevocable trusts or the revocable trusts and the resources, certainly give us a call. We provide free consultations to see how we can help and what the services would look like. All right, thank you. Be well. And we got some heat coming. All right, we talk about neglect for unfortunate realities for our neighbors. Heat wave is coming next week, so just be mindful of the older folks and air conditioning and water and so forth. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Take care.